For most of the 20th century, historians agreed on a basic timeline for how civilization began. First, humans settled down and started farming. Then, once agriculture provided a stable food surplus, they built permanent villages. Only after that, with organized society in place, did they start constructing large religious monuments and temples. Then, in the mid-1990s, a discovery in southeastern Turkey broke that timeline apart. Because the structures being uncovered at a site called Göbekli Tepe weren't built by farmers living in settled villages. They were built by hunter-gatherers, thousands of years before agriculture, pottery, or the wheel even existed. This is Archive of the Ancients. And today, we're descending into the site some archaeologists call the world's oldest known temple. Let's start with how this was found, because the story of its rediscovery is almost as remarkable as the site itself. Göbekli Tepe, which means roughly Potbelly Hill in Turkish, was first noted during a joint Istanbul University and University of Chicago survey in 1963. At the time, researchers assumed the broken stone slabs scattered across the hill were just Byzantine-era grave markers, and the site was essentially dismissed. It took until 1994 for German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, who had previously worked at a nearby Neolithic site, to revisit that old 1963 survey report and decide to take a closer look himself. What he found, once excavation began the following year, stunned the archaeological world. Massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some over 5 meters tall and weighing up to 10 tons, arranged in circular and oval enclosures, many covered in detailed carved reliefs of animals, foxes, scorpions, boars, snakes, and vultures. And then came the radiocarbon dating. Multiple independent tests placed the earliest structures at Göbekli Tepe between roughly 9600 and 9000 BC, meaning the site is somewhere between 11,000 and 11,600 years old. Excavation and expansion of the site continued for centuries, with the complex remaining in use until around 8000 BC, during what archaeologists call the pre-pottery Neolithic period. To put that in perspective, Göbekli Tepe predates Stonehenge by roughly 6,000 years and predates the Great Pyramid of Giza by close to 7,000 years. It was built before the invention of pottery, before metal tools of any kind, before the wheel, before writing, and critically, before most of the region had adopted farming as a way of life at all. That last point is exactly what makes this site so disruptive to how historians used to think about civilization. Klaus Schmidt found no evidence of permanent habitation at the core enclosures, no household trash pits, no domestic hearths, no signs that people lived there long-term. What he did find were massive stone monuments requiring extraordinary organized labor to quarry, carve, transport, and erect, all without draft animals or wheeled carts, built by people who, based on all other evidence, were still living as mobile hunter-gatherers. Schmidt's interpretation, which became the dominant view for years, was that nomadic groups from across the wider region periodically converged at Göbekli Tepe for large communal gatherings, feasting, ritual, pillar carving, and construction, before dispersing again. Some researchers have gone so far as to speculate these gatherings involved shared meals and even early beer-like fermented beverages based on residue analysis from large stone vessels found at the site. Perhaps the strangest detail of all, around 8000 BC, the people using Göbekli Tepe deliberately buried their own monumental enclosures under tons of soil, gravel, and rubble. This wasn't collapse or erosion. The fill was intentional and extensive.
Schmidt proposed this may have been a ritual decommissioning of each enclosure, possibly performed before a new one was built nearby, creating the layered sequence of structures archaeologists have since uncovered. Ironically, that deliberate burial is likely why the site survived in such remarkable condition for 11,000 years, protected from erosion and looting until Schmidt's team carefully excavated it layer by layer. Now, what were these enclosures actually for? This is where the debate continues, even now. Schmidt's original framing was that this was a temple, a purpose-built sacred site for religious ceremony, unconnected to daily domestic life, making it, in his view, the oldest known monumental religious structure on Earth. But more recent research has started to complicate even that interpretation. A 2025 study reported by Greek Reporter disputed some of the earlier assumptions about the site's function, and other researchers have proposed alternative or additional purposes, everything from a burial and ancestor commemoration site to territorial markers meant to signal group identity to rival hunter-gatherer bands, to more unconventional and less broadly accepted proposals, such as a 2025 paper suggesting a connection to communal childbirth practices. None of these alternative theories have displaced the ceremonial gathering site interpretation as the leading view, but they show that even after 30 decades of excavation, archaeologists are still actively debating exactly what happened inside these enclosures. There's also ongoing research into whether the layout of the enclosures reflects intentional geometric planning. A 2020 study noted by Smithsonian Magazine found that at least 3 of the earliest enclosures may have been designed as a single coordinated project using a shared geometric template, rather than built independently over time, suggesting a level of architectural planning that seems remarkably sophisticated for hunter-gatherer builders. It's also worth noting that only a small fraction of the site has actually been excavated. Estimates suggest archaeologists have uncovered perhaps 5% of what's believed to exist beneath the hill, meaning most of what Göbekli Tepe might still reveal remains buried and unexamined. Göbekli Tepe isn't actually alone either, which is another detail that rarely makes it into the popular retelling. Since Schmidt's excavations began, archaeologists have identified a cluster of similar pre-pottery Neolithic sites scattered across the surrounding region of southeastern Turkey, part of what's sometimes called the Taş Tepeler, or Stone Hills project. Sites like Karahan Tepe, Nevali Chori, and Sayburç, some of which feature similarly massive T-shaped pillars and carved reliefs. This suggests Göbekli Tepe wasn't an isolated anomaly built by one unusually ambitious group, but rather part of a broader cultural tradition of monumental construction that spread across an entire region during the transition out of the last ice age. Inevitably, a site this old and this mysterious has attracted no shortage of speculation beyond mainstream archaeology, including fringe theories connecting Göbekli Tepe to lost advanced civilizations, catastrophic ancient comet impacts, or even extraterrestrial contact, claims that have circulated widely on platforms like the Joe Rogan Experience and drawn public pushback from professional archaeologists who point out these theories aren't supported by the excavated evidence. The real evidence is arguably stranger and more compelling than the speculation. Ordinary Ice Age hunter-gatherers, without metal tools, wheels, or agriculture, organizing themselves well enough to plan, quarry, and erect 10-ton carved monuments, seemingly for the sake of shared belief and communal identity alone.
Klaus Schmidt led excavations at the site until his death in 2014, and the work he began continues today under new teams, alongside UNESCO World Heritage recognition granted to the site in 2018. What makes Göbekli Tepe genuinely important beyond its age is what it forces us to reconsider about the origins of civilization itself. The old assumption was that religion and monumental architecture were products of settled agricultural societies. Göbekli Tepe suggests the order may have been reversed in at least some cases, that the desire to gather, build, and worship together may have come first, and that organizing that kind of large-scale communal effort could have been part of what eventually pushed some human groups towards settled life and farming in the first place. So here's the question we'll leave you with. Did religion and ritual gathering actually help spark the beginning of civilization, rather than the other way around? And what else might still be buried beneath that hill, waiting for the other 95% to be uncovered? Drop your theory in the comments below. If you enjoyed rethinking how civilization may have actually begun, subscribe to Archive of the Ancients. New episodes every week.